Will you open the door? The Time We Have, a conversation between brothers, is available now. In this tragic two-player role-playing game, you will take on the role of brothers in the zombie apocalypse and the final days before one of you turns. This card-powered game is played on opposite sides of a closed door as you draw cards, ask questions, slide cards under the door in order to tell the story of your final days together. The Time We Have is written by Elliot Davis, illustrated by Ripley Ash, and features guest writing and art from some of your favorite creators in the TTRPG industry. You can grab the standard edition or the deluxe edition, which features 3 exclusive door cards and a beautiful limited edition silver foil box right now at moreblueberries.shop.
You've lived a sinner's life. Now you've died a sinner's death. Cruel, cruel fate has cast you down to the wretched belly of the earth. As your soul is mired with the burdens of your lived life, you begin to sink deeper, drowning. But before you give up, you're fished from the briny depths of hell's oceans. A figure stands above you and reaches down a knotted hand. As you cough and sputter the salt water from your lungs, the figure calls himself your captain and explains the deal. Here upon the seas of hell, a hell whale is said to be so unholy that slaying such a beast can earn you a place back in God's grace. And the captain has something that'll help find one. But he needs a crew. That's you. Hello and welcome to My First Dungeon, the tabletop role-playing podcast that helps game masters learn new games and make each one better than the last. My name is Elliot Davis, and I will be your host today, but I am joined by your guide and captain for this season, Shenuque Tissera.
Hey, it's me. I'm back, and it's the first time since Season 2 that I'm doing this.
Since Season 2, we're putting you back in the GM chair. Yeah. We're going to put you through your paces. This season, we are proud to be sponsored by our friends Plus One EXP as we dive into the religious horror TTRPG Hellwhalers. This game tells the tale of cursed whalers hunting a monstrous whale through hell for salvation of their eternal souls. And there's no better way to help us get ready to play Hellwhalers and to help you, Shenuque, get ready to GM Hellwhalers than talking to the game designer, Moss Powers, who is here to teach us the rules and will prepare us to tell the best cursed story that we can. Moss, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
Hell yeah, dude.
We're very excited to play this game.
Hell yes.
So, Moss, I read a little flavor from the text at the top, some you might recognize, but in your own words, could you give listeners who don't know, what is Hellwhalers?
Hellwhalers is a Christian religious nautical horror TTRPG of damned whalers set upon the oceans of hell, literal hell, where they are hunting a monstrous Leviathan whale for a chance at redemption of their immortal souls. That's the brief pitch, yeah.
I love a pitch that is so immediately evocative and tells you exactly what it's going to be. We're also on a bit of a religious trend with playing Bremen recently, and now playing this. So yeah. new Christian imagery for us to play with. Shenuque, so to kind of kick us off, you're going to be GMing, like you said, first time since season 2. What are the biggest things that you are nervous about that maybe Moss can help you out with today?
Yeah, I mean, I've read the main book and the Book of Leviathan, and I think there's so much to play with in this world. So the first thing I'm kind of a little bit nervous about is pacing for a 2-shot. We're doing this in 2 sessions basically. So just what is the right amount of pacing in terms of do we just jump into the action? How much breathing room do I give to the players? Can we fit fishing in, which we should, but I'm nervous and scared about it. Yeah. And doing that's I think the first piece of it.
Right. I've definitely truncating it shorter than 3 sessions is a little tricky sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I will say my best recommendation is don't worry too much about the exact numbers of souls. You can always have the captain say, I think we have enough, or have the whale come when it needs to come.
Right.
So that's a big part of that. I think you can definitely squeeze in fishing, probably over a couple days of gameplay. But in general, I would just lean a lot on the tables, try to visit some locales if you can. and then just try to give like a brief tour through whatever you find compelling about it, and let the characters do their thing.
And Moss, this is a game that obviously has like religious imagery and religious themes at its core. What kind of stories would you say like this game is good for telling at the table? Like what kind of theme and tone and stuff should Shenuque be going after while running?
I think it's been really good for telling stories where characters are ambiguously good, bad people.
Yeah.
Where the characters have very clear flaws that, listeners or whoever's playing might want to at first condemn them for their deeds, but then kind of realize like, what does the nature of like sin imply? Like, does it mean they need to be condemned forever to eternal torment? Or, like that ambiguity of telling stories of like, is this a good person or is this a bad person? Does it really matter? Does anyone really deserve something like hell?
Yeah. Like it does feel like the game does play at that nuance of like what is good and like what is evil, like who gets to decide that, and like
it really shines with anti-heroes for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shenuque, I know we were talking, and one of the things that we always want to do is set you up for success, but what you want to do is set the players up for success. So maybe, Moss, what is like the kind of best ways that Shenuque can guide players into creating characters that sort of fit well into that kind of story?
I'd say give them room to like highlight their backstories is like a really nice one. Like their mortal lives obviously played a big part in who they are and who their characters are. So make time for those flashbacks or those connection points. In some games I've played, the characters all kind of knew each other pretty well on the ship, and in some games their backstories were like revealed to each other through play. I kind of like when they're revealed to each other through play, but I'm not sure what style you're doing it necessarily. But there's definitely, you want to make sure you can highlight those backstories, because that's what really makes the characters more compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just the environment, it's not just the things they do, but it's also who they are, right?
Right. Yeah, I like the idea of like, or just like, at least for like a more condensed game of like, the players, I'm sure, like have been on the ship together for some time, but their backstories may not fully be known to everyone. I feel like that gives it that space of like,
putting that in the spotlight's really good.
Yeah.
So.
And then, of course, like Shenuque, you also get to play a character in this one. How do you feel about donning this role of the captain?
Yeah, I feel like another part of me that's a bit not nervous, like it feels exciting more than nervous, of like, oh, cool. Like, not only am I like the guide of the game, but then I also like am in on the stakes of like, we got to get this whale with the players, which feels really fun. And like a piece of like, obviously like every game is like the GM's a player too, but the GM and players, like, I mean, when I'm playing, I'm like, the GM's my enemy and I got to beat that guy. I got to kick that person's butt. But this feels like I'm also like invested in the success of getting this whale and like have to play to that, as well as like helping push the story forward. But it does throw off that like instinct that I get of like, these are my enemies.
Right. And I will say like that instinct is not entirely wrong either. The captain's kind of played to be a little bit of an asshole, and I think that there's a lot of room for antagonistic relationships with the characters, and I think that really you can foster that with that natural instinct to be a little bit of a meanie with some of the things that the captain does.
Nice. That feels like right up my alley of a little antagonistic little shit.
Yeah, I'm worried you might have too much fun with that. I guess more on that, like captain guide split, like Moss, in your experience running the game or when you've seen it run really well, how do people balance going in and out of like focusing on I'm the captain right now versus I'm the narrator?
I think it's pretty clear when you have like a captain scene you want to bring in, and having like players that understand that level of theatrical like showmanship, I think is really valuable for that. When you come in with a scene and you make a moment with the captain, I think having players that are ready to like be receptive to that moment and react to it is good. But until then, the game is largely like pretty free form. Like there's fishing, but it's pretty self-directed. There's like all the encounters, but those kind of come when they come. But in general, when the captain's showing up on the stage, it's usually like something that the players will pay attention to and something they will react to as it comes up.
Yeah, it's like any other characters, kind of like in any context of like any NPC is kind of like it'll make sense to interact with them versus the GM having to tell the story or just like guide the thing forward. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you're showcasing the captain, or like when you're using the captain effectively, it's moments of like pointing in a direction or peppering the scene with like some extra like reinforcement that this is a miserable place.
Yeah.
But in general, you probably, across a 2-shot, you'll probably only get to use the captain a few times.
Mhm.
But I would definitely make sure that that like miniature arc you're trying to portray with the captain shows up, of like, this is a person who is in charge of you and ostensibly a bastard about what they do.
Right.
But you want either some kind of conclusion to that, or you want some kind of like, I mean, a lot of it depends on what endings you're using and how that final encounter goes, but you got to be ready to like roll with what the captain's arc ends up as and how the players react to the captain and how they feel about him. I've had games where the captain gets killed because they just didn't like the captain enough that they managed to get the captain killed, and it was a very satisfying moment for the player. So
Right.
that's always on the table.
What does that look like? Like, how would you get the captain killed?
I'm
not a player, so I don't have any dog in this fight.
Yeah, no, we had one. We played on the +1 EXP live stream. It was like a 3-shot, and in the final encounter, like the players were just so enraged with the captain the whole time. But like I just had a moment where the whale just rocked the ship from one of the moves, and I was like, yeah, the captain tumbles off and the whale eats him. It was basically what happened.
Nice.
Everyone was basically cheering about that, so that was pretty great.
Love that.
So, like, don't be afraid to use the captain for things like that, too.
Right.
Setting stakes and stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess digging a little bit into like the mechanics, this is a game that uses like an interesting sort of dice mechanic through this game, Sick Bow. And I know we talked a bit about this on your Talk of the Table episode, but could you give us a primer on Sick Bow and how it's used in the game?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sick Bow, old gambling game, ancient China, but it's pretty simple. A lot of it is just placing bets on a board, kind of like a craps table, more or less. Roll the 3d6, and then whatever comes up will have a payout value. Typically, it's anything that is not the one on the payout, unless it is the 1-to-1. But you'll put in a certain number of souls. So if I put 3 on a total of 11, and then I roll an 11 on the 3d6, that pays out a certain number based on that roll. Or if they lose the bet, they lose the bet. But it's a pretty straightforward game once you kind of understand it. But it is a little... I didn't go into too much detail in the book, unfortunately. But it is a little tricky at first, but once you get it, it's pretty intuitive. But yeah. I would recommend practicing a few rolls by yourself for like getting a feel for the game abstractly beforehand, so you're not trying to pull it through at the table and second guessing yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. It feels fun, and man, I love a little gambling game inside of a TTRPG. I love that shit.
And for those, when at the table are we making those Sick Bow rolls, and what moments?
Typically, they're done once per night. So every game day has like a period of events that are usually reflected from the previous day's rolls. And then at the midnight is when the lore says that you should be gambling. So like towards the end of a game day, they'll all gather around the table and like start gambling. You can either include the captain or keep it secret from the captain or whatever you want to do about it. There's different ways to kind of play it. But generally speaking, they should know that that's their cue to gamble is when the woozy grandfather clock strokes midnight on the ship. So you can always chime that when you need a pacing set towards the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll have a sound cue for
It's
gambling time.
So that's a lever that you have as GM to like kind of move the pace along, is like, okay, stroke of midnight.
Yeah, I love the fact that there's a grandfather clock on the ship because that's an impossibility. But in hell, we can do anything. So it works.
Oh, it's a literal grandfather clock. That's really good.
Yeah, it's in the lore.
And one of the things that's unique about kind of the way we'll be playing the game is we record virtually with people all over. Do you have any particular tips for, because Sick Bow obviously has this board to it, for doing that virtually? Is there any sort of quirks added or setups you recommend?
I like using a VTT for it. I've just defaulted to Roll20 pretty readily because it's an accessible one for most people. But having the board stretched out enough that players can see it, and then placing their tokens or whatever controllable figures they have on the board onto the squares that they're looking for bets on. Just make sure they have access to multiple tokens they can move around, or if they want to map it out themselves, they can tell you what number they're on and you can move it if you need to. But that's my usual go-to, is I'll play virtual tabletops with it. But it should be pretty straightforward once you kind of like mark where the bets are on your board, or like have it in front of you and you see it.
Moss, when you look at you have both Hellwhalers out and the Book of Leviathan, these two very rich texts. Are there things that, like, if you had a wish list that you would love to see used that maybe you haven't seen used, or you just think are like essential things to be used in a game of Hellwhalers?
I do think in the original book, I wish I had prompted more results that push you to locales. Because I think a lot of the locales are really interesting and a lot of the items are really interesting, but those things don't really show up in the random tables. As a GM, you just kind of have to direct players to them. In the Book of Leviathan, I explicitly included them more into the tables so that those can show up more. But if you're running with content from Book of Leviathan, I would definitely recommend having both of those roll tables up side by side and just kind of choosing which result feels like the direction you want to pull in. Because you'll have basically two tables of random options, right? The Book of Leviathans and the core books, if you're running with both.
Right. So that actually kind of reminds me of a thing that I feel like is a question we always come to with GM'd games and like as a hobby and on this show is like preparation. And I know you're saying have these two roll tables up. And whenever I think roll tables for GM, I think that's probably on the lower side of preparation. But what is the right amount of preparation, and what are the things that Shenuque should prepare for when planning this game?
I'd say be prepared with a few either NPCs ready in case they come to a locale that has a few NPCs you want to introduce, or come in with the idea of how you want to play a demon if there's a demon on the roll table or whatever, what your approach to those things is going to be. But other than that, you're largely going to be at the whim of the roll tables because it is very procedural.
Right.
But just generally be ready to improvise and be ready with transitions and be ready with a few backup stocks of be ready to play a character when you need to play a character, be ready to pull an item when you need to pull an item. But they should have some prompts for how to contextualize them. But in general, you're going to need a little bit of a toolkit of how to have those things ready, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of not to take us off track, because this is such a shortened game, using the lore stuff, in terms of giving that to the players, or what is the best way to disseminate the lore of the world in such
a lot of that stuff is better for the lore stories themselves that are in the book. Yeah, those are better for longer form stuff.
Cool.
They kind of color the world a little bit, but in general they are mostly for longer form games.
Yeah.
I did run that 3-shot. I ended up putting them in dream sequences. So every night they went to sleep, they had a scene from a dream once they found the first piece of lore.
Cool.
That's fun.
So if you'd have enough days, if you have 6 days between your 2 days, or your 2-shot, that might work.
Yeah.
Although do remember that the whale encounter means they probably won't be sleeping on the third day. Or on the final day, rather. For adding things to the world, you could also pair them in twos if you wanted to do a little exposition and set it up in a group of 3 lore pieces or something instead of 6.
Right.
6 is a nice number because it divides into 2 and 3, but you could do 3 a piece and just do 2 segments.
Right.
But they are a little blocky when you start reading them out in longer form, so just be aware of that.
No, there's some juicy stuff in that lore.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Brian, and I just want to tell you about some cool new stuff from our friends at Hero Forge. Hero Forge offers fully customizable tabletop minis with dozens of fantasy species and thousands of parts to choose from, all within your web browser. Hero Forge is constantly releasing new content, and they've just launched their latest feature, custom acrylic keychains. These keychains use the same technology as their color standees and are the perfect way to rep your beloved character when you're out in the world. They are highly detailed, ridiculously durable, and made of 1/8-inch thick acrylic featuring front and back color printing, measured on the same 30mm scale as Hero Forge minis and standees, which means they will be a 1-for-1 match for your heroes on the battle map. Plus, Hero Forge just released stainless steel minis. These are perfect for anyone who's looking for the retro feel of old school minis. These stainless steel minis have a textured finish and a rugged, highly durable feel. So visit HeroForge.com to start designing your custom keychains and steel minis today.
Will you open the door? The Time We Have, a conversation between brothers, is available now. In this tragic two-player role-playing game, you will take on the role of brothers in the zombie apocalypse and the final days before one of you turns. This card-powered game is played on opposite sides of a closed door as you draw cards, ask questions, slide cards under the door in order to tell the story of your final days together. The Time We Have is written by Elliot Davis, illustrated by Ripley Ash, and features guest writing and art from some of your favorite creators in the TTRPG industry. You can grab the standard edition or the deluxe edition, which features 3 exclusive door cards and a beautiful limited edition silver foil box right now at moreblueberries.shop.
Pocket Bard is a free audio app that helps game masters weave immersive sound into their games. Pocket Bard's design is intuitive and simple to use, but I don't want to just say that. I want to prove it to you here and now, so the rest of this ad you're going to hear is going to be live and uncut while I am actively using the Pocket Bard app. So to start, let's set the scene. Imagine your party has entered a new location, a small town. With just one click, we hear that ambience coming in, but maybe I want to augment the sound of that town a little bit. Maybe the crowd is a bit bigger than what we're hearing here. With just one click, I can add more crowd in. Maybe all of a sudden the skies begin to slightly darken and a rain begins. We can hear that rain start over here. Maybe that rain gets a little bit heavier. Maybe the skies darken even more and we hear thunder and wind whipping around behind us. And all of a sudden, the air drops, the temperature drops, everything feels a little bit more intense as all of a sudden you get to say those 3 magic words as a game master: roll for initiative. And with just one click, that combat music comes in. We can increase or decrease the intensity with the intensity slider, and there are even one-shot sounds that you can use, like the town bell tolling in the background, letting the town know they are under attack. Maybe your ranger is drawing their bow and firing an arrow, and maybe your spellcasters are slinging spells left and right. The whole time you are doing this with just little clicks on your phone. It is incredibly easy to use and very intuitive. It's something I could actually use in my home game to make my sessions more immersive and exciting. So if you want to learn more about Pocket Bard, you can search for it in the App Store or by visiting pocketbard.app.
Sanguis Populi, the blood of the people, the dark protectors of the hidden city of Ozerod, deep within the illusory forest. Familiar with death as they have eluded it, they are called upon for a desperate task: slaying a creature from the great beyond. Blythe.
This might not be easy, being surrounded by death. I don't understand how they can do it.
Elvira.
Someone must watch the bodies, and none do so as diligently.
Swan.
Into action so fast. I love when we get to go out.
It came from the sky. This great, pale monstrosity.
You just had to sate your hunger. You couldn't have saved it for the beasts.
I prefer the gratuity.
Vampirism is not immortality. It only prolongs the inevitable. Is this the end for Sanguis Populi? Blood in the snow. A tale yet told. Halloween 2025.
Sorceress! Lower the barrier for just a moment. Sanguis Populi departs.
Listen to Tales Yet Told wherever you get your podcasts.
So you mentioned it, so I want to dive into it. The whale encounter is probably I'm going to be helping Shenuque produce this season, so I'll be a little, backup GM behind the scenes in the shadows. And the thing that I'm I guess nervous about nailing is this hell whale encounter. So could you talk about what the hell whale encounter is for the game and what your advice might be for nailing that?
Yeah, so it is the final boss of the game, obviously. Like, it is the thing between them and the ending, the epilogues. I would say, if you can, and you should have time for it, definitely get in at least one encounter of fishing, because fishing is the on-ramp for how to run the whale encounter. It is literally the same thing, just with one table instead of three. But that onboarding of how the knot mechanics work with fishing is very important for onboarding that. I would say otherwise, just when there's like lulls of like, oh, the whale dives in the water and you can't hit it this round, just like make sure you're keeping the narrative like urgency up. Like re-emphasize like the ship is rocking, it's flooding full of water, it's like there's probably a giant storm going on, there's like all sorts of things happening, but like try to keep that narrative urgency high even when the like actual action might be a little lulled.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, the stakes of, you don't get this whale, you're not getting salvation, you big dummies. Like,
right. Like, this is what they're here for. This is the big fight. So
this whale is everything.
The whale is everything. But, there's a thing we talked about in the Talk of the Table interview about what comes after the whale, which is the epilogues. Shenuque, I'm curious on your end, how do you feel about the epilogues? And like, have you read through them, and what are you thinking about that moment after this big boss battle?
Yeah, I mean, because I was reading the ones in the Book of Leviathan, and like the bigger fish one was one that was like, oh, that's fucked. Yeah, I mean, they're all fun and juicy. I guess like in choosing them, it feels like kind of like as the narrative unfolds between the players and like whatever happens, it's like, like I'm like picking what fits right, essentially. That feels like a lot of power and very juicy and good. But like, I guess like, it's just like setting the players up to giving them that final piece, and then they kind of take it away and decide for themselves, right?
And I will say, you definitely want to make sure you highlight that like final moment as they're crafting the stew. Because that is really important, because that is their last chance to say something before the ending really hits. And you do want to make sure that they have that time to like reflect with their characters on what they're about to do and the gravity of that, and like what they think they're about to get versus what they're about to get can really set the stage for a good finale.
Right.
Say more about crafting the stew, because somebody might not know what you mean by that. What is this moment of crafting the stew?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So at the end, when the hell whale is slain, every ending has this little beginning part that is pretty similar across all of them, where you're harvesting the meat from the whale and you're crafting a stew with your companions and you get ready to taste salvation. And it's that moment of like cooking it in the stew pot and the anticipation of like, what comes next? What are we about to do? What happens now? But you really want to highlight that role play moment between all the characters and give them a chance to like interact and get their final say in what they're doing before the epilogue hits.
Right.
So make sure that they have some good connection moments, final words, final thoughts, and then you can run the epilogue. And then if they have anything past that, depending on their ending, you can always touch a little bit on it and reflect on it a little bit. But in general, like that's their last chance to make a good role play moment.
Right. So it's like reading the portions of, or just like giving the moment of like, they're making the stew. Like, what are you feeling? What are you doing? And then like, then going into the epilogue.
Character X, you're making the stew. Before you taste salvation, what do you say or what do you feel? Or like, giving any of those moments to like bring in any of that final thoughts that they really get a chance to like put together before the ending kind of cuts it out.
Yeah.
And is there a world where they lose to the whale?
Oh yeah, that's definitely a mechanical possibility. I've seen it happen a few times.
How do you kind of land the ship in that case?
I mean, it can be like an oof moment for the table, but typically if the whale either rolls 6 on the 3 tables, or if early in the game there's a 666 roll and the whale shows up angry, both of those could be lose conditions pretty quickly. I would say I've had it happen, and it's definitely like one of those ones you just got to be ready to like improvise through, and the idea of like, this was the stakes and you knew the cost of what you were doing. Like, but like anything, like a TPK happens in a regular game, you just got to be prepared to like land it with grace. And there is an epilogue specifically about being defeated by the whale. But just be ready for that moment if it does come, because it is ultimately up to the rolls of the dice, and that's kind of what's a little bit tense about it.
Yeah, the dice choose, not me. It's all the dice.
I will say the temptation to fudge those sometimes is high, but I always am anti-fudge when it comes to that kind of stuff. So you do you, but
we're pretty anti-fudge over here.
Yeah. Hot take, but I like steaks.
Love steaks. Sort of starting to round maybe the corner on this conversation. I'm curious, Moss, if you have like a key piece of GM advice broadly, maybe about anything we talked about or stuff we haven't talked about, and then maybe a piece of player advice as well that Shenuque and I could pass on to the players, to the Cursed Sailors.
As far as GM advice, I would say be ready to pace it out and be ready to like steer a little bit if you're running a 2-shot. Because just by the nature of it, like there's a lot to explore in Hellwhalers. There's so much world. There's so many encounters that could really play out for a long time. But be ready to kind of round those out time-wise as you need to adjust the pacing.
Right.
So if you're running that 2-shot, like, and they're running a little long on something, like you can always make something happen. You can always chime the clock, or you can have the captain come in and make a scene about something, or you can always like throw out a random like item find or some other like thing to like drive us, to remind us what we're doing. Or like you don't even have to like rely entirely on rolling an encounter to bring in some of those ideas, right? You can have an omen show up that like points them in a direction, or you can have something appear on the horizon. But whatever it is, you just want to steer that like reminder of what they're doing and make sure that they're staying on track when they can.
Right.
But yeah, don't be afraid to like pull in bits that like push them forward a little bit if they run long on things.
Makes sense.
I would say for pacing out a 2-shot, what I usually do is I'll have like a day's worth of encounters and fishing, and then the following roll table, kind of depending on how long those encounters go. I'll usually start it out like day 1, you're just fishing and establishing role play stuff. Day 2 is those encounters from the roll table from the previous day.
Right.
And then that'll probably be your session 1. And then session 2 is obviously going to have to lead into the whale. So I would do like 1 day of lead up. I know time-wise, the whale encounter itself takes around 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay. Good to know.
And then with an epilogue, it's like 45 minutes. So just be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then player advice, I would say just like hold nothing back. That's my general advice for stuff like that, is like you don't know what's in your characters' heads until you put it onto the table, right?
We always say drive them like you stole them for like one-shots and short campaigns.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Drive them like you stole them.
So, Shenuque, checking back in with you, are there any things left? How are you feeling? Like, are there any like other areas you want to, while we've got Moss here to help you, any other things that you're worried about going into our session 0 and then our first session?
I think 18 years of Catholic school have prepared me well for this.
That'll do it.
I guess the only other thing that I maybe wanted to talk about is in this game, like what makes a good hell? Like what makes a hell that's interesting for people to exist in?
I'd say making sure that the reinforcement of like it's miserable, but it's not inhospitable in the sense, or not inhospitable, not in unsurvivable, right? Like it's miserable, but that's kind of the point,
right?
And you have this like it's always raining fire or bile or something horrible, and like it's always going to be a problem when things happen. Like nothing is convenient in hell.
Right.
Like, of course it's miserable, right? But it's not outright lethal until you get to the lethality.
Right.
It's not trying to kill you, it's just trying to make you suffer.
Right.
Like having a space that like reinforces that this place sucks is pretty good. Although I would say periodically peppering those reminders is good, but you don't need to like wax poetic too long about it.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Making it miserable and like, but also giving them the glint of hope that like,
right, there's something out there.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about on Talk of the Table was that this game is at its core about hope. So on the reverse of what makes like a good miserable hell, how do you pepper that feeling of hope throughout for the players.
I think having like little tidbits of like the imagery of like hope is really important. There's a lot of the omens and a lot of the imagery that kind of shows up in a lot of those encounter tables that really like touches on the concepts of like divinity and hope and like what it is, you know, some of it's religious iconography in its classic form, but like you have things like doves or you have like, you know, various rainbows in the sky or things like that, but like none of them are as clear cut as they should be. There's always going to be like a dark twist to it, but like there's something representing that there is something out there, but leaving it ambiguous enough and oftentimes like dark enough that you can maintain the horror tone is really valuable. But like I think in general, keeping that core of there is, I won't stretch to say like there is a god here, but like there is like something here that is like worth having a salvation for, right? There might be a place up there,
right?
Yeah. Shenuque, you feeling ready for this?
Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm gonna hurt my players.
Gonna hurt them
bad.
So, Moss, before we do our little outro, I actually just have a fun little question that I think we usually ask in interviews when we remember to, and I would just love to ask for like kind of maybe a favorite story from play that you feel like is indicative of like an ideal Hellwhalers moment.
I would say probably the +1 EXP run through where we played the 3-shot, having our character Mr. Purse, who was playing the greedy. Mr. Purse was the greedy, and they ended up being just kind of a bastard of a character. Like they were just so rotten the whole time, and they were like making a snarky remark at these oil rig demons that were like on an oil platform from the Book of Leviathan, and having one just walk up and stab Mr. Purse, I think was very indicative of like, these people aren't your friends. This thing is designed to get you. So, but having it just walk up and a knife in the gut as a hello was a very like appropriate Hellwhalers moment, I felt.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those moments are going to be metaphorical knives in the gut, but that was a literal one. So.
That rocks.
Well, I'm really excited for this season to see what kind of knives in the gut that you plan for the players, Shenuque. Thank you so much, Moss, for coming on the show and helping us set our cursed captain up for success. Do you want to let people know where they can find you and where they can find Hellwhalers if they want to pick it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on here. I'm super excited to see the run through of it. I'm Moss Powers. I can be found most places on the internet at Mossdagger, MOSSDAGGAR. I'm mostly active on Blue Sky, a little bit on Tumblr. You can probably find me on Discord. I have most of my games under Brewist Tabletop Games. I'm on itch, brewisttabletopgames.itch.io. You can find Hellwhalers and Book of Leviathan on +1 EXP's website, ttrpg.link/BOL for Book of Leviathan, or ttrpg.link/hellyeah for Hellwhalers. That's really where I'm at most of the time. That's all I got.
Hell yeah. And we will link all of that in the show notes. And if you want a deeper dive on Hellwhalers and Book of Leviathan, you should check out Moss's Talk of the Table episode, which we did just a couple months ago. We'll also link that down below. Shenuque, you ready to set sail?
Oh, we're gonna get him. We're gonna get him.
We're gonna get him. Brian's not here. We're gonna get him.
Brian's not here. Can't stop me now.
And that is all for this episode of My First Dungeon. Join us next time as we craft our cursed sailors in Session 0 of My First Dungeon presents Hellwhalers. And remember, if you're having fun, you're already doing it right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
If you're hearing this, that means you listened to every last second of this episode. If you're not caught up yet, that's great, because then there's plenty more to listen to. But if you are caught up and you simply can't wait for the next episode, then you should head on over to patreon.com/myfirstdungeonpod and become a member of the Dice Pool. For just a few bucks a month, you'll get cast talkbacks, original games, and a full-length bonus actual play each and every month. As of the end of 2023, there is already over 20 hours of bonus audio, plus a whole bunch of other goodies to enjoy. So head on over to patreon.com/myfirstdungeonpod and jump into the dice pool. We'll see you there.